got kicked out of Socastee, and then I got kicked out of Calvary, and then, my dad started a school, and he kicked me out 3 times and let me back. But Reverend Randall, he's the one that, he was one of my teachers, and I treated him horribly. I mean, I was unsaved. I was a redneck and rebellious, and I treated him so horrible. I mean, horribly, horribly. But he never faltered on his love for Jesus and his integrity, no matter what we or any of the other kids did to him. Fast forward 10 years later, and I feel like it's time that I finally give my heart to the Lord. And so I just happened to call Reverend Randall, and he was at my house within an hour and helped lead me to Jesus and answer my questions that I needed answered. And then a few months after that, I felt like God called me to start a church. So I called Reverend Randall, and I said, I feel like God wants me to pastor. And he said, well, let me pray about it. And he said, do you trust me? I said, you know what? I trust you. Whatever God says to you, I'm good with it. He said, okay, we'll find out. Well, Reverend Randall told me, he said, I'll pray about it for 3 days, and I'll let you know. And the next day, Reverend Randall went to a church that he was overseeing, and the pastor preached a sermon, and it was titled, Go Build It Now. And so he said, I think I got my answer for you. This just happened. And so Reverend Randall, he helped me. He helped me with the 501c. He spent thousands of dollars helping me get started. I never paid him. He helped me with advice and encouragement. He was there for me every week. I mean, this went on for years. As I started to grow in ministry, really cool things started happening. The church was growing, and these other pastors from around the area, the U.S., Georgia, and Florida, they would see me or hear me, and then they wanted to help me and be in my life. And it got to the point where one Sunday in 2015 for Easter, we had 1,100 people in service. And I was 34 years old. This was 10 years ago. We had 3 services on Sunday morning and a big service outside and all this. And I was starting to get a big head. I was starting to get very, very prideful. The thing about pride and mental illness, or I think mental illness is probably the most horrible thing we can face in our bodies. And pride is probably the most horrible thing we can face in our spirits. And here's why. When you're mentally ill, it's the one sickness you have that you don't know you're sick. And you have to trust people around you because you're saying, no, they're lying to me. They're telling me I need medicine. I don't need medicine, because the thing that's sick is your mind. And your mind is what you need to realize that you're sick. But you don't know you're sick because your mind tells you you're not sick. And your mind is the thing that's sick. Well, pride is the same thing. It's the one sin that covers up, you don't see the sin. And when you got pride, you don't know you got pride because you got pride because pride covers up the pride. Do you understand? So you have to, and I had a few people tell me I was getting prideful, and they weren't very nice about it. So I'm like, I'm not prideful, jerk, whatever. And they didn't come to me lovingly and say, hey, we really need to sit you down because you seem to be getting kind of arrogant and stuff like that. So I started getting really, really prideful. And there's these other pastors that were helping me, and they had bigger churches. And Reverend Randall, he has a very, very small church because his ministry isn't, he's not really a pastor so much as he is an evangelist and an outreach. He feeds hundreds of families up in Little River. He's on every board in all of Little River, helping schools, you have no idea all the ministry he does. But his church is very, very small. So I had this one pastor who wanted to oversee me, and he would fly me all over the U.S. with him. I was in my early 30s to help train other pastors. And my part was to help them the way I prepare a sermon, to teach that part, and then he would do all his things. And I felt so special. I felt very, very cool. And the church was growing. We had 1,100 people in service. And so that week, I called Reverend Randall, and I said, I don't need you anymore. I got other pastors that want to help me. They got big churches, and they think I'm going to do great things, and I really appreciate everything you've done. I don't need you anymore. Can you imagine the pain I caused that man? I bet he's a very godly man. If he wasn't godly, he was probably thinking, you tall, white, skinny little jerk. You little prick of a toothpick. Oh, I could snap you in half is probably what he's thinking. All these years I helped you, and I poured out for you, and I came to you, and I did this and I did that, and I helped with every problem you ever had, and now you're going to kick me to the curb because you think you're some kind of hotshot pastor? Pride goes before a fall, right? Okay, yeah. So I fell, and I fell hard. I fell short. When I fell, all those other pastors left me just like that. And I went from 1,100 to 12. And I left ministry. Months went by, and I felt like God called me to come back and start a new church, Solid Rock at Market Common. Guess who I called? I called Reverend. Guess what he said? I'll be right there. He acted like nothing had ever happened. I begged his forgiveness. I said, I'm so sorry. I was so arrogant. He said, I don't even remember it. He said, it's no big deal. That's loyalty. And listen, let me tell you why that's loyalty. Not about me. That's loyalty because he loves Jesus. 2 Corinthians 1:4 says he brings